He didn't recognize me. Not at first. Not through the crowd. Not with the champagne glass trembling in my hand. Not with the suit I borrowed from a friend and the shoes I polished until they gleamed like success. My father, the man whose name made doors open and people bow, looked at me like I was a stranger who had somehow slipped past security. And in a way, I was. I wasn't the little boy who used to wait on the stairs for him to come home, or the teenager he had dismissed with a wave when I said I didn't want to take over the family business. I was someone entirely different now, someone he had thrown away. And tonight, in a room full of the elite, expensive laughter and designer perfume, he was about to do it again. But this time, I would let him. Because I wasn't here to beg for a seat at his table. I was here to build my own. 3 years earlier, I had walked out of his mansion with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. It was the night of my graduation. I had chosen to study design, not finance, and that choice in his eyes was a betrayal. He wanted a legacy. I wanted freedom. He saw waste. I saw art. He told me if I left that night, I'd be on my own. No trust fund, no family business, no invitations to the events that made our last name echo in the hallways of power. And I left anyway. For weeks, I slept on friends' couches. For months, I ate noodles and pitched ideas that no one believed in. I took freelance gigs, designed logos for cafes, illustrated menus, built websites that paid just enough for rent. But I was happy, hungry, tired, uncertain, but happy. Because I was building something that was mine. The journey wasn't romantic, it was raw. I remember one winter night when my electricity was cut off, and I wrapped myself in 3 coats and worked by candlelight. I remember being laughed at in a boardroom when I presented a branding concept for a startup and being told, "You're just a kid with dreams." I was. But those dreams were heavy, and I carried them like bricks. I built with them. One client turned into 2. A bakery used my logo and told me their sales doubled. A fashion startup trusted me with their full rebrand and ended up on a magazine cover. Word began to spread. My inbox started to fill, and I was still wearing secondhand shoes. And then it happened. One of the biggest names in tech reached out, a reclusive investor who had seen one of my designs on a street billboard. He asked to meet. I went in, nervous but focused, and pitched him not just a design, but a vision, a new creative agency, one that combined branding with storytelling, strategy with soul. He looked at me and said 6 words I'll never forget. "You remind me of myself once." That afternoon, I walked out with my first major investment, and with it I registered my company, hired a team, rented a small but stunning office, and worked day and night until we weren't just another agency. We were the agency. Our work spoke in silence. Clients began to come not because we were affordable, but because we were different. We didn't just design brands, we resurrected identities. When the invitation to my father's 60th birthday party arrived, I almost threw it away. It was thick, gold-trimmed, hand-delivered, but the words inside felt thin. "You are invited." No name, no son, just a formality. A reminder that I was never truly gone, just removed. Forgotten, maybe. But that invitation, that cold reminder, sparked something. Not revenge, not bitterness, just closure. I didn't want to attend to prove anything. I wanted to stand there as a man who no longer needed validation. I wanted to see him through clear eyes. So I RSVP'd yes. The night of the party, the valet barely looked at my rental car. The doorman asked if I had the right address. Even inside, I was scanned like a mistake. The glittering guests wore silk and arrogance. I wore confidence stitched with humility. When my father finally spotted me, he leaned in and said too loudly, "Did someone let the help in?" A few laughed. I didn't. I held my glass, nodded slowly, and said, "No, sir, just someone who used to be family." His eyes narrowed. He waved at a waiter. "Escort him out," he said. "This is a private event." I didn't resist. I left quietly, my heart pounding not with shame, but clarity. I was never meant to fit into this world. I was meant to rise beyond it. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the middle, because in just a few weeks he'd be calling me, not as a father to a son, but as a businessman to a boss. 2 weeks passed. Then came the call, not from him, but from his company's board. Their top branding firm had just collapsed after a public scandal, and investors were pulling out. The board needed a full rebrand, a new public face, and someone who could rebuild trust fast. They needed someone outside the old guard, someone fresh, unconventional, respected. And as fate would have it, my agency's name came up again and again. I took the meeting, not out of revenge, but because the challenge intrigued me. When I walked into that glass tower conference room, all the suits turned toward me like I was carrying fire. And seated at the head of the table, stunned into silence, was my father. He didn't speak at first, didn't even move. I introduced myself professionally and laid out the plan with clarity, precision, and purpose. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. And I didn't mention the party. My father remained quiet until the very end, when the board voted unanimously to approve the partnership. Then he looked at me, eyes searching mine, and said, "Well done." I nodded. That was all. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want a speech. The moment he acknowledged me not as his disappointment, but as the man who could save the empire he once thought I wasn't worthy of, that was enough. The rebrand was intense. I led a team of designers, writers, strategists, and tech experts through sleepless weeks of transformation. We rewrote their story, not with lies, but with truth, transparency, and a deep understanding of what modern leadership looks like. The company began to recover. The press turned, investors returned, and my father's name, once again, was associated with trust. Not because of what he built, but because of who he finally trusted to rebuild it. Me. Toward the end of the project, we had one final dinner, just the two of us. No suits, no cameras, no pride. He sat across from me, older now, quieter than I remembered. He said, "You did all this without me." I said, "No, I did it despite you." He didn't argue. He just nodded. Then, in the softest voice I had ever heard from him, he said, "I judged you by the clothes you wore, not the vision you carried." I didn't respond, because the truth was I had forgiven him long ago, not for his sake, but for mine. Today I don't need his approval. I don't chase his acceptance. I run an agency that empowers voices often overlooked, people like me. People who were once dismissed for being too small, too strange, too different. And every time someone walks into my office wearing secondhand shoes and big dreams, I remember that night at the party. I remember the silence when he threw me out. And I remind myself, success isn't loud. Sometimes it just walks in quietly and builds a new empire. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. Your worth isn't defined by the room you're rejected from. It's defined by the world you're willing to build when no one is watching. Rejection isn't the end. It is just a redirection to a life where you are no longer asking for a seat. You're building the whole table. And one day, the people who turned you away might find themselves waiting for you to open the door.